So I want to welcome you. We want to begin this session by acknowledging the original stewards of the various lands that we are all on. We also want to acknowledge our ancestors and those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We want to acknowledge all the elders and community stewards whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So again, I want to thank you all for taking the time to come and spend International Women's Day with us. It's an honor to introduce some of today's guests and this event, Birthing a Nation, an international gathering of doulas. This is definitely going to be the first of many. So we appreciate you all for taking the time to be here. So I'm going to take the time and introduce our guests, or I'll let them introduce themselves. I'll start with myself because I am also a doula, actually. So her name is Blessed Brooks, and I am a fertility doula and holistic doula out of the GTA. And I learned traditionally over the past 10 to 11 years from some of the elders out of West Africa, as well as Haiti, and more recently throughout Morocco. I've been doing a lot of work with ladies from there and Angola, Canadian out of Nova Scotia. So we also have Indigenous roots here. And some things have been passed down through the family that sort of skipped a generation. But I work out of the Yoni Spa, and as I said, I work as a fertility doula. So I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited to share with all of you and hear from some of our other fellow doulas around the world. So I'm going to ask our sisters to introduce themselves as well. Can we start with Jalissa? Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, sis?
Greetings, everyone. My name is Julie Brown. I am a holistic full spectrum doula that was certified here in Cape Coast, Ghana. I was just about to get into how I got started in this, but maybe that will be one of the questions. But I definitely appreciate you all for joining us today and look forward to the conversation.
To unmute and introduce yourself.
Hi, yeah, you were saying Gabriella. I wasn't sure if it was somebody else you were speaking to. Hi, folks. My name's Gabrielle Griffith. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a queer and non-binary doula living and serving in Ontario, Canada. Came to this work through my own lived experience of parenthood, recognizing the gaps and barriers for parents and mothers to receive the support and care that they need and deserve while they transition into parenthood. And I'm looking forward to today's conversation.
Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate that. And we'll go over to you, Victoria. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Peace and blessings. My name is Victoria Swanjiro, and I was Los Angeles born and California raised. And really, through becoming a birth worker, I didn't seek it out. Women in my community would ask me to support them during labor and assist community midwives in the occupied Los Angeles area and in occupied Bay Area, Oakland, San Francisco. So really this work, has called me to it. And now I'm also based in Ghana, West Africa. So I totally get the rebate, I understand. And same, we can talk about this more, but it's really the women are like, we need your services, we need your support, being a traditional holistic doula. And so, the work has called me to it and I'm embracing it. I'm grateful for it. So.
Thank you. Appreciate you taking the time to be with us today as well. I will go over to you, Ms. Jordan Gibson. Go ahead and unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jordan, daughter, doula, disciple also. I come to this work as somebody who wants to serve community, the next generation specifically. So I'm really looking forward to today's conversation. I won't dig too much into it.
And last but certainly not least, we have Amos Lasse. Go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Greetings, greetings, greetings. I understand the Ghana experience. My name is N. Selassie. Um, uh, I guess I would say I'm a bit of a baby in process. There was the impetus was I was soon to have a grandchild, and just as the grandmother, but in another way. So that was an impetus. And of course, COVID came and got me delayed 1 year. But I was still able to birth my first grandchild on October 6, 2020. The care, the support, and the love of a doula, and supporting mothers and fathers and family in the process, especially Indigenous or BIPOC community, was something that really called me from the area and the concerns of the things that happen to our community. So I am actually another Californian in the house by way of Michigan and currently in Ghana.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you for being here. So that is our full panel today. So this is going to be a roundtable discussion. All of our panelists are in the birth worker field. And we want to start off the discussion by just asking, what is everyone's perspective on what a traditional doula is, the African context, as well as in our contemporary community throughout the diaspora. So I'm going to go ahead and throw it out to the floor first. If you want to start, Gabrielle.
What's my perspective of what a traditional doula
What a
is?
traditional doula is.
To keep it short, I would consider a traditional doula as a community member that is there to serve and hold space for people through reproductive experiences.
Absolutely. I think that a lot of times today, it's a bit of a buzzword, and we didn't necessarily have that traditional, like an actual word for it, but it was really, like you said, a community member, your sisters, elders, aunties, grandparents that would come together and support women, whether it was in labor, birth, postpartum, but definitely a community member that shows up in different ways. And Jordan, do you want to go ahead and give us your perspective of what you feel a doula is?
I echo Gab's sentiments. We are really kind of big on the community's role that has kind of been interrupted as a result of the Canadian context, the industrial kind of urban lifestyle that we live in here downtown Toronto. I think ultimately a doula is somebody who has extra knowledge on reproductive health and wellness, and extra knowledge on how to care for a birthing person. So it's a in my personal perspective, because this is a very contentious topic, it's about somatic support, so helping their bodies, social support, helping their being, spiritual support as well, helping kind of like how they're processing some of these intense things. And then in the Canadian context, that's systemic support, like how do you navigate a fundamentally anti-Black system? I think a doula can really step in and support there. I'll leave it there.
Exactly. That's just the beginning. I love that. Okay, go ahead.
May just be hidden. It's the traditional mothering to me. I think of the tradition of women helping women, and women supporting women. So it goes back to the first person who spoke about the community. Medicine, men in medicine, white men in medicine, and we can keep going, that involved in birthing and money and all the other stuff, and took away a lot of that. And for me, being able to go back to the roots of us birthing, supporting, caring, loving, and all that it takes to be there from conception, not, in general, yet to the point of when that child comes and how we then support them thereafter, because it just doesn't stop. They will need help, especially in our communities that suffer from so many isms.
I appreciate your perspective. Victorious, are you good now?
Okay, yes, I'm good now.
Go ahead.
So yeah, I share similar sentiments with all the previous panel members. Sometimes when I go into the hospitals or clinics or sharing what I do to people, I say, remember in the old days before there was the doctors and the certifications and the women would gather and the aunties and they would be in the back rooms, you know, making the soups and tending to the fire and caring for the children and supporting the mom and walking with her and staying with her. I said, that's what I do. Simple. The long and the short, and now though with, the certifications and the teachings and the trainings, yes, I study with different midwives and getting different certifications. But before, like I said, I would just get called because I was in women's spaces and the sisters and the midwives would ask me to support. And then I'm like, oh, this is an actual profession. This is an actual thing. Let me get knowledgeable and train and study. So, yeah.
I appreciate that. Absolutely. And as you said, like, I love that you paint the picture for people. And I know exactly what you mean. You have to really show them it's just a support person, right? So we're familiar with the term in the mental health field, a personal support worker. And that's really the same idea around birth working, because you are a support. And it's very true, as we're going to go into the next question, as you touched on, getting certified versus being traditional. And I think a lot of sisters are coming forward now to distinguish themselves as, traditional or holistic doula, because, we were the original ones and the ones that typically did really birth a nation, which is why we're here today. And it's funny because a lot of times here and on the Western side, you'll find that a lot of the gatekeepers and a lot of the official certifying bodies are of European descent. And those are the most recognized, the most respected over here. And so oftentimes when people are looking for a doula, now that it is the latest craze, they're looking for your certification to come from those spaces. So we're going to get into that as we continue on. My next question I want to throw to the floor is around the importance of building awareness for Black maternal health care crisis globally. So this is something that we've been talking about for a few years now, and I just want to hear everyone's perspective on it.
So to answer your previous question also around traditional birth workers and doulas, I think that when I hear the word traditional, just like everyone's saying, I'm thinking of back in the days. I think of the grandmothers and, just the women in the community, in your own intimate community that are there to support you. And so that was really aligned with the reason why I had got certified myself, because, the opportunity had come up and I said, okay, for myself as the leader of a sorority, you never know when the sorority we all might have to run into the bushes, and somebody might have to give birth, and there has to be somebody that knows what to do. And so that is the reason why I ended up getting my certification. I would say that, like, in regard to the certification question, generally people don't really ask for my certification. No one has ever asked me to see any certification, but I guess that's because I don't really work in like the public hospital setting. And as Victoria was saying, like, we tend to work in spaces where our moms gravitate towards us simply because they feel that compassion and love and support that naturally, comes from us as Black women. And so, yeah, that's where I stand with that.
And did you want to talk any more on the Black maternal health care crisis before we lose you? Was that it, Jalissa?
Yeah, so I definitely would say that, on the continent, we don't face the same type of issues around Black mental health, Black healthcare. Our systems are, of course, different. And so I can definitely, see all of the many different ways that Black women and Black people in the healthcare system are not really supported. And, I think me being in Ghana, a part of that is to discover how we can create new ways to return to what our centers were as communities. And that was, again, going back to those that have the information like stored within our bloodline, and finding ways to ensure that, all of the things that our grandmothers did teach us remain within us as a community. And, hopefully we'll be able to build new ways and new centers and, just new different pathways to access for our Black people to have access to, rather than having.
It was about 10 a.m., 2 a.m., early morning. And they're like, no, turn the lights on, turn the lights on. I'm like, how is a mom gonna give birth? Like, the lights are blaring, And so I think it's just the ignorance, to be honest, in how women's bodies work and how they give birth, And I'll specifically say, to this context of Ghana, the education system is from a European white male background standpoint. And so in these traditional institutional settings, that's how they're being trained. So they're only being trained to deliver one way, standing up at their convenience, the mom in a position that's not, going to really support her progression. Just everything about the whole situation is substandard, right? And if you don't come in as a doctor, as an OBGYN with all the licensing and the paperwork, then who are you? You're insignificant. Goodbye.
I think it's really interesting for you to point out that you're finding that same perspective and that same ignorance sometimes, or at least the education and structure, you're saying in West Africa, as well as what you've experienced here in the West, you were practicing in the US. So you're seeing it on both sides.
Yeah, it's bad. It's so bad. In San Francisco, as birthing people, you all will know that the mom's body has to be moving around. The mom's body has to be moving around. And I'll never forget, we were in San Francisco Hospital. I used to teach preschool. So I'm a certified, I have my master's in education, I have my teaching credential, and that's why I'm around so many mommies, right? And so one mother of 5 asked me to support her in her birth. I was like, I support moms. I'm telling her, like, take these vitamins and stretch and eat these foods. And I'm like, if you need help, just call me. That's something that I do, like, on the side, is help moms give birth. And she's like, really? I was like, yeah. Graduation was May 19th. May 21st, she called me in labor. And I came to her hospital in San Francisco. And I was walking her around, and we walked out of the labor area into the cafeteria, and one of the nurses came running after us. You can't be out here. And we're like, we're just walking the baby down. And it was like we were under arrest. And like we were like doing something so bad. And if you don't get
something
back,
as simple as walking,
then we're going to discharge you if you don't get back into the labor ward right now. And so fine, we just walk back to the labor ward, and then we just walk back and forth and back and forth. But again, walking back and forth versus how I was trained, just in the home, moving around, you can go anywhere you want naturally, is just not the same as imagine being in like a prison and you're just walking up and down your one little hallway. That's all you have. That's kind of like the same energy. When I think like the hospital birth versus the home birth setting, the same fluorescent lights, the same bland food with no love, no energy. It's just, I can't. It's hard. It's really hard.
Crazy to think that you witnessed that over just walking. That's not even the crazy stuff. That we haven't even got into positions and things like that. And different things are happening all over, because I've also heard over, and I think in Holland, they do the vaginal steaming to induce labor right inside the hospitals. So they could be so progressive, and then some of us can be so behind. And I've heard a lot of horror stories about women, whether it's in labor and birth or it's in postpartum scenarios in the hospital, where the nurses are very aggressive and attacking and want to control the way you touch your baby, hold your baby, bathe your baby, all of this stuff if you're sleeping with your baby in the hospital. And it's only adding anxiety to the mother, the parent, and then the baby's feeding off of that. So they're actually like worsening the situation in so many ways. So I can definitely see why people obviously want that home birth if possible. But I'm
thinking once again, a baby in it. The funny thing, coming from Michigan, there may be more now in the last couple of years. But at the time, my daughter-in-law, beautiful queen, who had the baby at home, that was her ultimate goal. She wanted it in water. And that did not happen. So that's that other thing about expectations and what the body can and cannot. And we did all this. We walked stairs, we walked outside, we had the yoga ball that she would squat on, you know, but every time she got in the water, when labor came, the baby didn't want to come. But I think of hospitals, and I wasn't present, but I've had some students, I'm a former educator, and they spoke of both sides of laboring at U of M hospital, where I come from, University of Michigan. They have a labor in, you know, space and all, and it's a lot of things, you know, lighting candles, being able to allow you to have who you want with you, you know, have all those things. Yet that part about aggression in other places, it all depends, or another part of the hospital, especially getting in and what your plans are and that is so negative and so hostile, and setting up that energy when a mother is going through so much. And if they're with a partner, not a partner, you know, single parents, whoever it is that's coming, it's being able to understand that the hospital's very sterile. So I second what Victorious was speaking of, about how it's white and it's the light and it's this, and then especially during COVID, and you probably get there was so much negativity about who and can and cannot, and you know what's going on. And I know this is my period of time, but that's where I came in and doing so. Yet hearing these juxtapositions have been such a great experience for understanding and being able to honor women, their family, for what they want, and getting their list of things they want beforehand. So when we're talking about food and what they can, what they want, I remember how my daughter-in-law wanted this certain light. She had certain music. Once the baby came, she wanted X, Y, and Z. So when we got all her list and all the things she wanted, and it was myself as the doula, the midwife, and there was one woman who was in her final, what do you call, internship or externship for becoming a midwife. Like I said, in Michigan, I think there was about 3 or 4 at the time in 2021 of Black midwives. We're talking Detroit area. Wow. It's like crazy when you can't. So she was well sought after, and it was just fortunate that she was able to be there. It's just being able to understand that the hospital has all these rules, regulations, to me, that bring about more stress and distress to the mother and the whole system of helping her get through what is a beautiful experience and can be, yet always quick to C-section. And I mean, with just so many things that I've heard from my students that were just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. And then the belief, because you don't know what to believe. I remember having my first child, which is 30 some years ago, which was just like, oh my gosh, it was horrific, just the idea of all that was going on and the messages that were coming. So, and being able to be a part of the system early on and capturing women and their family in a way to say, we will be there as your advocate. I am an advocate. I will be your voice. Yes, your husband's here, your partner's here, yet I want to be able to support them because they may or may not be able to get the words out. So for me, looking at how the high mortality rates and all the damage that happens in that birthing process that can bring about more pain and also a loss of a child, because there's things that happen in those spaces that don't have to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is unfortunate for both the child and sometimes the mother. And you touched on the low numbers of, Black doulas available or midwives available in Detroit. And we definitely experienced that here. I had my children 5 years apart, and both of them, it was a struggle to get a Black midwife. It's like everybody in the Durham region was either on maternity leave or fully booked. And then when I called another place, they said,
oops, the role of a doula in Black community, as I alluded to earlier, doulas are community members. Like when I'm talking to people that don't know anything about doulas, I'm like, doulas are basically professionalized aunties. They're the person who knows all the things. They've probably been through it. They're gonna come cook you some food. And I think one of the community impacts of colonialism has been the disenfranchisement of our communities, specifically for people who are parenting and child rearing. And so the role of a doula in this context, in this system that we are operating in, serves as a community member to help fill those gaps of what has always or should be there anyways. I'll leave it there to open up the rest of the conversation to other folks, but yeah.
Absolutely. We thank you for that. Victorious, I see you applauding. You want to add to the conversation?
Yes, Gabrielle, that's just spot on. You know, I was just reflecting yesterday. I just left Akosombo to spend time with the family, and the family had just transitioned less than 6 months ago. And this is the first time I'm at their house. And as I'm leaving, she's like, yes, Auntie Victoria, yes. So, like she hired me to be her doula, but at the end of our day together, she's like, she's the auntie, And so
I love that professional auntie. I never heard that one. I never heard it like that before, but I like that professional aunties.
Right. But it also depends on what kind of doula you are, right? So my background is in education. So she had 2 younger children. I'm going to take time and spend time with them. One of their children is 10 years old. Okay, little brother, you have just graduated to big brother. You're 10. You can wash the dishes now, helping the whole family acclimate and take on new responsibilities to help. So yes, we're the aunties. I spend time in the yard planting seeds with their 5-year-olds and shoveling and watering the plant. It's the holistic support, right? Maybe a different type of doula, more clinical, will offer that, and that's the boundary. She doesn't do that, but I definitely resonated with Gabrielle because that's how I came into it, was just the professional auntie.
Absolutely. And I see, and Emma Selassie, go ahead and unmute yourself. I see you have your hand up.
Yes, it was an old hand. I was loving the professional auntie part of it, and putting everyone to work in some capacity, because there's a piece, that's what community is. That's what the village is. That's what family is. We have a job to do. And when you think of, being able to help in all that full, because they're going to also be there in the rearing, especially in the community in which you're in, you're hoping that there's people who are going to stand up so we can continue to reclaim things that were before. So here, being in Ghana, I'm seeing communities in, in a different way and responsibility. And actually a lot of the independence that we used to work 5 and so a part of who we are, see that of men and women helping the children down the road or picking them up in the proggy or whatever it is. It's the same as what we would do in the home or in the neighborhood, and the closeness, because that baby is going to need the love, the attention, the direction, and the support of all of us to grow and know who they are and who they belong to.
Absolutely. It's so important. It takes a village. I mean, that's what it really comes down to. And I think we're definitely the originators of that phrase, that it takes a village. We believe in that. Jordan, do you want to go ahead and tell us how you feel the doula is important to the Black community?
I think the doulas, or the role of a doula when we are united, does have the capacity to serve as a significant buffer against the effects of anti-Black racism, almost in the way that the church used to. There's my bias, it is what it is. But that kind of group effort of we may not all like each other, we may not all agree with everything, but we are united in accessing or maintaining what freedom we do have. And I think that in the process of rearing children and raising families, we need all the support that we can get, because we're doing it all by ourselves. We tend to be isolated in the Canadian context. So I think that if the doulas were to, link up, we could have an army, of carers that are rooted in love rather than a politic. Or maybe the politic is love. Factors, we are kind of mercenary in a way. But if we were to kind of link up and gather and, unite, I think the institution, or doulas as an institution, could be very, very beneficial to Black communities.
Yeah, I think that's very necessary. I love the way you put that, because I do think there is a need of for some sort of uprising of, like you said, the Black doulas to come together and be united, as you carefully put it. And also when you spoke on the fact that regardless of differences, you'll see that that's sort of where we bond and come together, almost in the way that protection that you used to have, like you said, from the church at one time. I thought that was really interesting. I remember there was a scene, I want to say it was Empire, when Cookie was in prison and her and her nemesis were at each other's throats. But when it came time to the fact that she was going to give her, they put all the nonsense aside and they squashed it. You forget all that nonsense. When it came time to get exactly what you're talking about, that when it comes to childbirth, everything else, fades to the back, difference in faith and religion, things like that. So I really appreciate that comment. And the next question, from all over the globe.
We still have to survive and make money and all of this. But for me, I know not everyone is my client, right? So I'm so thankful too. Like I said, I just came back from a Kosovo, from a crowd. That's a journey, a mission, about 4 hours, depending on how you travel, what time of day. And, it's time commitment, it's energy commitment, it's all of that. You're giving to the whole family in my role as a holistic doula. And I was just so thankful for when I told, the 10-year-old, I'm like, okay, you want to play your game for an hour? Okay, so 1 hour from now, that'll be 3:25. And at 3:25, you're going to get in there and wash the dishes, and then at 3:25, dad and him were in the kitchen. Dad was in his ear, like, make sure you get these dishes done, So again, having the backup of the support, not like, why is she in there telling the kids to clean up the house? I'm like, trust me, when I'm not here, you're going to wish your 10-year-old son was not in there playing video games, but being responsible big brother and helping out. Because, some families think they could just do it all on their own, mom. And I'm like, you can't, and if you do have big brother or big sister, they can pick on a role or responsibility, and then they get extra privileges too, right? So that's what I would say. Just be inclusive and have these traditional values. So then if someone does step in, then everyone knows this person is coming from a good heart space to support the whole unit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so true that there's a shift right now where there was a time when people appreciated the support of, the aunties and elders in the child rearing. And sometimes there's boundaries that, have shifted from generation to generation. So definitely something to consider, especially as a doula, when you really have been invited into that family space. And Jordy, how do you feel on this topic as well?
I'm going to ask you to repeat the question if you
Absolutely. Do you think that what recommendations for doulas that would assist in creating a more inclusive, affirming space for childbirth?
So this is directed towards doulas, not families?
Doulas specifically.
I would say know yourself. I think what we need to do is to know who we are, what our triggers are, what our motives are. Like, what are we actually doing in this work? Are we trying to save people? Are we trying to support people? Like, what's the motive? What's the mission? Know yourself keenly, because you are coming into a space that is so vulnerable, so open, so sensitive. It really is a privilege, honor, and gift from the Most High that you even get to be in that space. So I feel like that role as a doula, you are a most sacred servant. So you need to do your work, like clean your heart, make sure that you're positioned in the direction of righteousness, whatever that means to you, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, just like get your mind, get your heart, get your body right, I think is my keen advice for a doula.
I think that's very, very unique, but definitely effective and very important. And Abba Selassie, do you want to add to the conversation? What do you feel is important to help create more inclusive and affirming spaces for childbirth?
As you say, the shift is going on. I applaud everyone for all that they're saying. Like, we're all on the same wavelength, it seems to be, and I'm happy to be and honored to be in this space with everyone. And thinking about doula to doula, I don't know, I've always called myself a soldier. I think it's because I was reared for my mother to be a soldier. So you lead by example. That's what my mother, I was the older sister. I had 2 siblings. So it was that piece that they're looking to you first, just like they would be looking to parents. So that part of shifting back and reclamation of history. And I'm in between. I'm not 60 and I'm not 30. Yet that piece of being that link has always been where I have been involved from the work and education, educate her that I am. Because what was is, and we have to clear the dust web. We got to demystify. We got to get away from, well, science says, medicine says this is what we do. This is not right. And you hear that over and over again. Well, how many, you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for your grandmother's grandmother's grandmother. Somebody had a baby that was not in the hospital. You know, someone did X, Y, and Z. So for me, it's leading by example. And as the beautiful queen spoke about checking yourself, what are you doing this for? Not my way. No, it's going with the flow. It's a dance. It's the drum. It's this, because that's how it is. What is needed at the time, sometimes you got to make a quick change. Yet you're doing it in the effort of love, kindness, support, compassion for the outcome, for a beautiful birth child who will be in this world with the hopes that they will have a brighter future and that we will be a part of that as a community.
Absolutely. And because of what you touched on in us, like changing and shifting and adjusting to things, the question I definitely that there's any regulatory frameworks that become barriers for Black doulas.
I would say there's plenty. We were just talking about the medical system and how all that plays a role in what we can and cannot do. So that, as well as just, I think some of the regulatory is the isms that happen, what women can and cannot do, what is allowed, systems that are in place that really tear us apart more than bring us together, and how to delicately do that balance of support. Because, well, I read this, or I heard that, or my mom had this, or the hospital said that, or this is, so it's all these things. And as I said, I mean, I don't care if it's the first or the last child, having a child is not an easy feat. That first one, definitely. And like I said, I remember it like yesterday about how much messaging came from me that I had to have it in the hospital and I had to have this. And if I was in labor this long, it's the problem. And, and then having white individuals around me who were not and did not look like me, having my mother who I loved to be there, but was very stressful, having a husband at the time who, was just scared of everything. So it was just, I felt like I was alone. So these systems of communication, these systems of sharing amongst ourselves in the community, having, as Victoria spoke, a community person who just said, oh, baby, that'll be all right. The big mamas, the aunties, who always were like, everything's going to be all right. They always just assured you that it was always going to be all right. You never really knew it. But they would say, oh, baby, it'll be all right. Don't worry about it. Well, you got this. Well, being able to like I said, I'm a claim old. I'm in a Sankofa journey for myself. So reclaiming, digging my heels in, unearthing, remembering my grandmother's grandmother, my mother, and those things. Yet the systems of hospital, medical, insurance, biases, prejudice, racism, all those things are wedges rather than benefits or advantages that can, depending on the system where you're at, your locale, we're internationally very global. And as I said, I give praise to U of M in some capacity, not everything, but in regard to birthing and having a whole space for family to birth as they like. And once again, having the option of doing it at home.
Absolutely. It's a growing desire, a growing need. But I remember seeing a post a couple of weeks ago that said, people are transitioning to wanting to get a midwife, but then they're still hitting some of the same roadblocks as with an OBGYN. And I said, yeah, because it's the same systems that are certifying and training both of them. If you don't specifically look for some traditional trained midwives and doulas, then you're going to find that you're getting the same thing with a different name, unfortunately. So definitely something to be mindful of and something that we need to, attack as a community. And we'll go over to you, Jordan. Regulatory frameworks that become barriers to Black doulas in your lived experience.
Oh yeah, man, all of them. They're all barriers. Like all the systems are barriers, and that's like why self-awareness and self-knowledge and systemic knowledge is so key, because you got to know how to finesse the system so that you can serve your people, whatever that looks like. And sometimes it looks like, oh no, we're going to get you some food at your birth. Like, I know they said you can't have no food, but we're going to get you some food. I'm going to slip it in my bag and you're going to eat the food and go about your business. You know, that's like, yes. Short answer. Yes, there are systems. Yes, there are barriers, and that is what it is to be a Black human being in a Canadian context, right? Or even in a global context. Like, there's going to be barriers that are rooted in colonialism or like whatever, however you slice it up. So I think educating yourself, I know that that places the burden on the oppressed, which is an ideal, but it is what it is. But taking the responsibility or taking charge to educate yourself in the ways that you can work around systems that don't serve your community is key. As a doula, as a daughter, as a mother, because when you get your baby and they're in the school system, they're gonna try and punk your kid there too. Like, it doesn't end, it just starts right here at birth. And so if we get the rhythm of how to navigate these systems early, we're best positioned to serve our community. I'll leave the rant there.
Thank you so much. Gabrielle, would you want to add as well?
I feel like Jordan said it all. Like, they are all barriers, and we were talking about regulation, thinking about where I'm located, Ontario, Canada in general. Like, there are no Black owned, Black run traditional doula organizations anywhere, right? So even as someone living in the space that I am, if I want to learn from my people, I have to travel across the border. I think the closest would be New York, to learn from my people, to learn the ways that I want to show up and serve. And that in itself is a barrier. Got to pay for the training, got to pay for the travel, got to pay for the stay, all these additional things. And not all of us enter doula work for the money. This isn't always a big money-making opportunity. And so even still, I've been in this work for 6 years now, and I still haven't had that opportunity to be in space, physical space with kin, with community, and learn from my people. Thank the universe for the internet and spaces like this where I can have those opportunities to connect. But yeah, I'll leave it there as well.
And we're definitely going to build from this. Like I said, this will be the first of many, because the conversation does have to continue when we do need to change that narrative, where, like you said, we have to travel so far if we want to learn from our own people. Not everybody is in different, communities here where you have a lot of the diaspora here that have that in their culture. So there is a need to travel for it, unfortunately. So we definitely want to raise up against that. And we'll go to you, Victoria, so you can go ahead and answer that same question.
I'm just over here with goosebumps right now from Gabrielle and Jordan in this whole conversation, because I was having a challenging conversation earlier this week with another doula that was actually trained in Canada, and we're both based here in Ghana. And apparently the Canadian certification process that they went through was very extensive. And basically the long and the short is they feel a way that certain people could do a 10-day training like the one offered locally in Cape Coast as a holistic doula and call themselves a doula after, say, supporting in 5 to 10 births, where they in Canada had to do hundreds of births and unassisted births and all kinds of different certifying bodies. And so there are these kind of like certifying wars and midwifery wars. Are you a lay midwife or a nurse midwife? And I'm like, this is too much. This is too much. Don't come for me. And so all of the barriers, even within women of color, Black women, who certified you and what's your credential and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, oh my Lord, So it's giving me goosebumps, because sometimes we have the outside, the man at our throats, and then we do it to ourselves, right? And so I'm just thankful for this affirming conversation knowing that you all are also in the occupied Americas, doing this work, unfortunately, not even with other Black and brown women, right? So I was thankful to have Indigenous women from Mexico, from the Caribbean, Black granny midwives out of Los Angeles train me. And so that's more of my lineage. I learned the herbs, the foods, the baths, the songs, the prayers, the ceremonies. Don't come for me because I don't know all the clinical and I didn't have to do 500 births in the hospital. Don't come for me.
We definitely appreciate that. And as somebody who was here and partly trained here, I definitely know exactly what you mean. Definitely there's different types of doulas and some are more extensive than the others. I'm sure they may mean well, but like you said, you have a different approach, a different experience, and a still valid experience. So unfortunately, I think in some ways it's becoming saturated with maybe the wrong people. And I think someone alluded to, not all of us got into it for the money, but because this is so ingrained in our history, it is so natural for us. And so it really doesn't make sense for us to have to go sometimes to these kind of spaces to jump through those hoops when it is really second nature for us. It's something that our ancestors have done from time. So this one last question is really just what call to action do you have for the Black community and what are your closing thoughts? And we'll go back over and start with you, Emma Slasia.
Repeat again, I'm sorry.
Your call to action for the Black community and your closing thoughts.
Oh, okay. Well, I just saw someone in the chat saying we wish we had training like this here in Canada. And I believe they were speaking at the time in which Victorious was speaking. And I know that at least two of you on our panel here are from or have gotten their training here in Ghana. So for me, the call to action is find your worth in what you know. That's going back to your grandmama, your madias, your aunties. These people may or may not have told you, but they've been part of many, many things and have lots of wisdom. And because we have come to times where sometimes they are silenced because our modern world is changing so rapidly that they're not even asked. We're not sitting at their feet. We're not asking those questions and say, what was it? And I know I am in this, repeating again, the Sankofa journey and thinking about my great-great-grandmother, who was my father's mother. And she comes to me a lot now. And I remember all the things she was. And I'm like, wow, she lived to 102. Wow, I wish I could have interviewed her. I wish I could have asked her these questions. There's so many things in my journey being here in Ghana for the last bit of time has really continued to make me want to know where I come from, what I am, what makes me the woman, who were those seeds that I carry. So that's one piece on having that, each one teach one, knowing, thyself, in many of the proverbs and parables we could come from and when we speak as African descended individuals. Yet that other part is, don't let those systems hold you back. Someone asked, well, what can we do? Well, there goes that kind of thing. What can we do to support each other? I mean, I know there's a National Doula Association or something like that, I believe, that's out of New York. Yet, what can we do globally to be able to link up, to be able to support, have that conversation, to have those experiences, share the do's, don'ts, the information that we have that are tools that then come naturally or can be enhanced in the tools and skills that we want and moving forward and growing and birthing a nation of positive and beautiful African descended individuals who will lead the future because it is our time.
I think everybody on the call has definitely echoed they are ready. Like you said, it is our time and we do want to take up space and create that safe space. And, we have taken our full time. And as we said, we will definitely be coming back together again. If any of our panelists have any closing thoughts that they absolutely have to get out, I don't know if you're emotioning for me, Jordan, that you had to say, get something, no? Okay, so I want to encourage everyone to drop their contact in the chat so that anyone can follow up with you if they are interested in connecting with you some more. And we will definitely be following up with all of our panelists and guests. I do want to thank everyone, especially our panelists, for being here today and taking time. And we want to also end the session the way that we began, by acknowledging our ancestors and the original stewards of the various lands that we are on. Also, those who toiled without compassion or compensation, all of our elders and community stewards whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Again, thank you so much for coming out, everyone, and we'll see you at the next roundtable.